Thank you very much. It will be obvious very quickly that I speak no Hebrew. So as you struggle with what I say, understand that I was struggling down here in the front. But fortunately, Ron was whispering in my ear so that I particularly heard your wonderful words. So thank you very much. Thanks so very much for all of you who are here, particularly those of you who are educators. I was blessed to be, my mom and dad were career educators in Columbia, South Carolina. So they beat into me the importance of study. My father was my high school football coach. My mother was my middle school librarian. I worked for both of them. I was halfway good in the library and not very good on the football field. But nonetheless, my father taught me to cry. My father taught me that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. And my mother taught me that you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to work hard and study hard, and by all means ask for what you want. So with those words, I'm going to try to help you answer the question for the conference. Why? Why space? This is an image that I'm certain Alon saw over and over and over again during his flight, because this is one of the more stark images that stands out to almost everyone who's gone to space for sometimes not so obvious reasons. This is your region of the world, this is our region of the world, and it's a region of the world that people generally think of in terms of sadness and strife and everything else, when you know that that's not the case, because you're always trying to instill positive outlook in students and hope in students and a reason to do the kinds of things that they do. I'm going to paraphrase something that Alon said during his flight, and I won't get it exact, so Itzhak, if you're here, I know you are somewhere, don't throw bricks or stuff like that. This is not a quote, but it is a paraphrase of what he said. And after seeing this for several times, he said, you know, when you finally get a chance to go to space, the first day or two, you're trying to find your country. And he said, in a few more days, you recognize that you need to find your region of the world. And then in a few more days, you realize that you're really not thinking big enough, because you recognize that you're a citizen of the world. And this whole globe on which we live is ours. And so if you say, why space? Alon's words will give you a pretty good idea of several of the reasons. One is because this is our globe, and this is a bad part of what we do. This starts like in 18-something, and it'll go all the way up to 2015. And it's a time lapse of the temperature of our planet. And this is one of the things that space has given us, is the ability to look at the bad things that we're doing to our planet. I don't need to tell you, because you probably teach it in your classrooms. The yellow's bad, the red is horrible. We're living in an ever-increasingly heating planet, and it's unsustainable. So this is a reason for space. This looks like airplanes, and they are, but in order to get to space, you've got to get through our atmosphere and the like. So the desire to go to space causes people to try to make faster and quieter and cleaner airplanes so that we can get to space better. We still have this dream of what we call single stage to orbit, where you get in an airplane on a runway, lift off, go, and you keep going until you get to space, and then you come back. And we're on the verge of being able to do that, but that's another reason for space, is inspiration, as you said. This is the James Webb Space Telescope. Another reason for space is because we want to understand this universe in which we live, which is billions and billions and billions of stars and galaxies and constellations. And what we're learning more and more each day is that almost every star that we've identified has an orbiting system of planets around it. So that means they're not 8 or 9, since I'm still a Pluto fan. Not just 8 planets in our universe, but billions of planets. And we actually believe that many of them may be able to harbor life if they don't already do that. So James Webb is a telescope that's going to be 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth, and it's going to help us to look into some of these planets orbiting other stars on which we believe there can be life. In order to do that, however, and here's where your critical part comes in as teachers, you've got to be able to inspire young women and people of color, people who are different in this region, to believe in themselves and to believe that they belong and to believe that they can achieve. NASA struggles with that every single day, but I'm going to show you something that'll kind of give you a hint of what we're doing to try to remedy this problem of not having 51% of the people on the planet in positions of responsibility in NASA. Now, one of the things that I hope you saw in that, everybody's not an astronaut. Everybody wasn't a scientist. Everybody doesn't even have a technical background. So for your students, you should tell them that everyone can involve themselves in the quest for space. Everyone can. The one profession that we in NASA lack so dearly is one that's near and dear to my heart, and it's storytellers, it's writers, it's journalists, it's people who can help us tell our story. I get questions a lot about people, Elon Musk, for example, who wants to colonize Mars and die on Mars. And my advice to all of you who think about that, don't do it. You do not want to die on Mars. And I don't want you to die on Mars, because I want you to come back and tell the story. And I want you to come back and tell people what you experienced and why it was exciting and why it's important and why space. All of us have an obligation to Elon and to Rona to finish the story. You know, Elon didn't go to space to stay. He went to come back and share his story. And that story goes on through the foundation and through the work of the Israel Space Agency and the work of the different cabinets in the government, but that story needs to continue to be told. And so you've got to help us produce the students who will become the Alain Ramones, who will go to space, who will become the Rona Ramones, who will promote studies in science and engineering and English and Hebrew and languages, so that we can get along better as people on this planet. This is where we live and work today. But things are changing. It's getting old, and we're really working together now, the different space agencies of the world, to try to move off this platform and onto what we call commercial platforms, so that more people can go to space and more people will have an opportunity to live and work in space. And this is some of the kinds of things that we want them to do when they go there. So as I get off the stage here, I'm going to leave you with a question again. Why space? How many of you have thought about it? If you haven't, think about it. Because you have to convince young people in your classrooms that it's worthwhile. It's worth the risk. One of the things that several of us have been talking to the students about this morning and the whole week that we've been here is, you know, it's okay to fail. In fact, sometimes it's important to fail because we learn critical things from failure and having an opportunity to fall down and pick ourselves back up. You know, Elon's mission did not end as tragically as we here on the planet generally seem to think, because what he left us with was one of the greatest challenges, which is to pick up where his crew fell down and keep moving. And so hopefully you'll come out of this Space Week and you'll come out of this night. You're going to hear from a great friend of mine, Koichi Wakata, and ask him lots of hard questions, okay? Promise me that. I have to leave, unfortunately, because I've got to go back to the U.S., but ask him hard questions. But again, it has been such a pleasure for my wife and me to spend this week with all of you here in Israel. This is sort of like our second home. We try to get here every year this time, and every once in a while we come in between. But we love all of you, and we love what you do. Just keep your hearts in it, and keep your students inspired, and help them to understand that they can do whatever they want to do. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. So get in there and fight and be successful. So thanks so very much to all of you. Shalom. Thank you.